this one I'm going to get a coaster.
Okay. Just a minute, I just want to make sure that we have it on the 4 channel.
These sweat, so. Would you like light on? I can turn the lights on too. Would that help?
Oh, I'm fine
Here, I'll
with
turn
the
it on. You
light.
tell me if you want it on or off. Let's do it.
Okay.
That's probably better, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make
Yeah,
a
this
big
wood,
difference.
I love this room at night, but the wood absorbs, you know, all the light. So what would in another room be a lot of light isn't.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Oh, I think you'll get it. Steve, can you get it? I called a dentist. I have a tooth all of a sudden that doesn't like any cold in my mouth. I don't think he heard me. Excuse me.
Sure.
Hang this up on the machine. Hello? Oh, yes, hi. Thanks for calling there.
I'm not trying to take away what you're reading there. I'm just grabbing this underneath. I want to make sure that we kind of get the demographic information. Let's just get that out of the way when she comes back. So
that is the green space.
yes. I love the music she's got on. I just love classical music. So, yeah, you might want to just start getting the basics kind of done and out of the way, and then make sure you take notes.
This is about owner.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because there's a lot of things you're going to get from this, that you might end up piggybacking off of.
Hey, Steve, if the phone rings, would you answer? Okay. I'm so glad I took it. I'm sorry. It is the dentist, and he didn't see me at 8 a.m. I mean, you know when you have a warning spot, which
Yep.
I hate. I hate dentists. I hate to.
So do I.
I just hate him. He has this beautiful office. He's so proud of it, and the last thing I want to do is go in it. Okay,
So we are conducting a
Yes.
study of the historic water tower
Right,
neighborhood to
right.
document and identify things that are cultural relevance
right.
and try to tell a story or share the past story of this neighborhood.
I saw your program at UWM that you did last year or whenever, and I thought it was wonderful. I love the mapping. I call it mapping, but what do you call the program?
The
Yes,
BLC Field School?
Field School. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. So say it again. It's BL.
BLC?
What does BLC mean?
Buildings, Landscapes, Cultures.
Oh, I see. Okay, Field School. And is that in what part of the UWM? Or isn't it?
It cross-lists between history and architecture.
Okay. All right. That's right. I knew it was art. Okay. Okay. Excuse me.
That's okay.
And you may find there are another more interesting to be added to this project. So we're conducting another field school this year. So
Oh, you are. Good.
yeah, I'm a new student actually here. I just moved to US.
Oh my. Well, welcome. And don't you love Milwaukee?
Yeah, so far I love
I
it.
hope so. You may not like our spring weather, but you're gonna like once it warms up forever. Is it cooled off yet? It's going to get real cold again today.
It's, the breeze is nice.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
helping.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Good. Well, welcome. Yeah.
So today you may want to share your experience of this house, or how the change of the use of the house and things like that, or
Right.
even the neighborhood you
Right.
have been living here for.
I've been here. Yeah. I've lived in this house in 1964, so it's going to be 50 years next year. But but I want to go back a little bit. My husband's father was Thomas S. Vanaleya Sr., and he was an architect. And he did a lot of houses in River Hills and Shorewood. I mean, really big, massive houses. And he started to buy houses in this neighborhood and convert them to a 2-family or a 3-family, but usually a 2-family, because the area was going downhill so badly. And so he bought the ones that he thought were attractive on the outside. A few of them he made exterior changes, but not many. And then he was a genius at the division within the house. So we had, at one time, we owned 10 houses from Park to Lafayette, from the lake to Lake Drive, or to Terrace, really. Well, no, to Lake Drive. And so now we own 5. And it worked. I mean, when he started to remodel these and take these big houses and kick all the roomers out because they were starting to become rooming houses, it started to change it. And then I was one of the founders of the Water Tower Landmark Trust. And I was I can't remember if I was their 2nd president or their 3rd, but that was when the Water Tower went from Lafayette to Newberry. And it went over to, at that point it went over to Downer Avenue, but it went behind the east side of the building, so it never included Downer Avenue. But anyway, so so that has been a big success to make this a historic district. I mean, it's made people comply with the law, and it also adds a stability. And now we have many, many young families and people who've moved in. And my daughter and her husband are living on the corner of Lafayette and Terrace in a 3-family that we own. And they've been in New York. She's been there 17 years, but the park is wonderful, and they love living here. So, and then my husband and I got married in 1962, and 2 months after we were married, his grandmother died, and she was given this house as a wedding present when she got married. And then when she died, the county had started tearing all the houses down on the bluff. So do you know all this? Am I repeating what you already know? Oh, okay, good. So to tear them down to make it all park. And when they could not come up with the $37,000 to buy this house, and they also were quoted in the newspaper as saying they didn't think it could be torn down. And with the tavern that's below us, this 2-story tavern, you couldn't really tear this house down. You could fill it in. I don't know. I mean, it would be astronomical. I can't even imagine. Well, neither could they. So instead, they took the money and then bought the Northwestern Railroad Station, which is in a way a tragedy, because it was one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I mean, I just loved it. But then, on the other hand, we saved Villa Terrace. So, and we stopped them tearing the houses down. They did tear down one more house across from the Water Tower, so coming south on Terrace Avenue from North Avenue. And that was the Milwaukee Historical Society's house. It was a beautiful house. And that's when they were stopped. That's when they ran out of money, and it seemed crazy. And then it was Mrs. Smith, but then she got married to a Mr. Curtis, and she owned the Villa Terrace, and so then she donated it, and then that just saved this last block. But when this house then, when they didn't buy it, my father-in-law thought it would make a wonderful 4-family, and it has this caretaker's apartment. If you walk through that doorway, down below, there's 3 bedrooms, a bath, and kitchen, and below that is a garage, and below that is a 3 or 4-bedroom apartment, and with 10-foot ceilings. And and they have a basement below them, and then a sub-basement, and you're still then 1 level off of Lincoln Memorial Drive. But so, where was I going with that? Anyway, so it was already a 2-family. So when he asked to make it into a 4-family, they turned him down. Then someone was going to make it into a restaurant, and they turned that down. That might have really been kind of interesting, too. In fact, I think it would have been really fun. And then my father-in-law came up with the idea of a 2-family. And I'd been married, gosh, I came from Beloit, Wisconsin. We were living in this little apartment. We'd only been married, I don't know, by that time, not quite a year. And I just remember thinking, this house was enormous, and living in half of it. All the furniture in our apartment wouldn't have furnished a bedroom, some of them. And so I said to Tom, if your father's going to do that, I want a divorce. I said, I'm just simple. I said, there's no way I can do that. So then he suggested tearing the house down and building a duplex and making this a residence, and then it has that apartment. And they went with it. And none of us have ever understood why, because then he got a 4-family. So we could have saved the house. But it needed a new roof. It needed a new boiler. It was massive. It was 13 bedrooms. I don't know how many baths. It was, I'm really thrilled. I mean, And while it was massive, it was not beautiful. So have you seen a picture of it? I'll get you a picture
Sure.
from the wall so you can see what it looked like before this room, and that was a ballroom before this was added. This was just a big dancing pavilion attached to the house. But underneath us, the tavern and the apartments, that was the original 1890 house. And so I have a cornerstone I can actually show you for this room and then the next. And then one of the rooms that got torn down is now on the second floor of Villa Terrace. They recreated the room. It's not the same dimensions, it's a little smaller, but it shows the really beautiful oak paneling. So, and then we moved in I think 1964. So, now I can stop, or now you can tell me what more I can give you, what you would like to know.
I heard that these green spaces used to be houses.
No, that was. Across the park. It had, it had 2 houses when I moved to Milwaukee in 1958, but it may have had more. I don't know. And I know that the last house got torn down after I'd moved to Milwaukee, and some friends of ours, Dudley and Godfrey, was living in it. In fact, you could probably always contact her. She lives on, her husband died. He was head of Godfrey and Kahn, the law firm, but Connie Godfrey is still alive, and she lives on Hampshire and Lake Drive. But she was the last person to be living in a house over there, and they were, I don't believe they owned it. I want to say I think they were tenants, but I could be wrong. So anyway, so they did tear some houses down there, at least 2, and maybe more, but I don't know.
I don't really know the direction. But
yes.
Here used to be a lake or things that were filled with lake.
Yes, well, Lake Michigan, that's all, Lincoln Memorial Drive, that's all landfill. And the lake, I'll get the picture, because I'll show you, I'll bring the picture and I'll show you. It showed that the lake came up on either side.
She means both sides. Do you think the color works well with here? Just move, we can move the color goes in?
Sure, if you want to. Yeah, it's pretty much between you and her. So.
So maybe we should take a tour upstairs and walk. Do you want to do that first? You get a little idea. This is the way the house looked in 1890.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so you can see there was no Lincoln Memorial Drive or anything down here. That's all landfill. And so this is either beach or lake. And we felt it was on the other side too. And so we're sitting up in here. And then if you walk through that doorway, then you're in this section. And below that, that's a garage. And then here's the apartment. And this was, at one time, I guess they raised chickens and things even, and they had a greenhouse. It had a glass roof. And then we found in the tavern, which is underneath us, this 2-story tavern, we found ship-to-shore radios. So I feel pretty strongly at some time there was some bootlegging going on. So how far the actual water came up, I don't know. It certainly didn't come up to the house. Do you see what I mean? You can see that, and that may just be beach. We just don't really know. We don't have any picture. So then, let me just, is that going to wreck it there? Is that going to be all right? Then this is the way the house looked when it was finished. So this dancing pavilion was added in 2 parts. And we're in the first part. And then it had double doors, and we took the doors and closed out a window there, because that's on the north, and we just thought it would make it warmer. And so when you walked through there, this was a 2-story ballroom. And you can't really see it, but it has balconies around it. And I had to do some work on the east side of the house, 8 or 9 years ago. And the balconies, they were really rusted, and you could never safely step on them, the ones that were out here. So we took them off. But and my father-in-law, when he did the windows, the window treatment now is different, because we have 2 bedrooms and 2 baths here, and one is a small little windows. But along here, I think, were French doors that would open up. And then this was the dining room. that would have been right there where you walked in the front hall. And then if you keep going south toward Terrace Avenue, toward Back Bay, this was the room that's recreated in the, it's called the Bromley Room, and it's recreated in Villa Terrace. And they photocopied the book I had on the Bromley. There was a publication of that Bromley Room from the Victoria and Albert Museum. So Tom's grandmother, when she was very influenced by people like Mrs. Potted Palmer in Chicago and Mrs. Jack Gardner in Boston. There's the famous Gardner Museum, you know. And so those were the women that were starting to do things like copy rooms from castles and big stately homes in Europe. And so Tom's grandmother just decided to go along with the flow. So let's just go upstairs. Let's just take a little walk.
Okay. So what year was the initial home?
1890.
1890?
And then I'll show you the cornerstone for when the two wings were added. They were added in two parts. And some architect showed me how you can tell that, but we never knew that. I mean, I don't have, but I think you are getting, your program is getting a chance to see John Eastberg's book. He's the head curator of the Pabst Mansion. And at auction, he bought the book on this house. So he has photographs and things of it I've never seen. I mean, or that I don't remember from the back. So anyway, when this would have been over the dining room. And this was a big, huge master bedroom. There were 13 bedrooms. And then there were bedrooms on the top floor. So this was all dressing area. Here. So if you walk in there, this was a dressing room. So if you keep going straight ahead, you'll see there's a bath. And then it came out, and then it comes around here. Those were all mirrors. We just painted them out so we could use it as a guest bedroom. And then there was another bathroom here. And then all these built-in things. And I love this. I've used that a lot in hangers. Some little things that we don't do anymore. And then I think that my father-in-law had these painted. They were in that room in there, but I'm not 100% sure. Then this room was added when they did the downstairs. I mean, this was the first part that I think 1916 or something. And it's always been purported to be a copy of one of Marie Antoinette's bedrooms, but I have no idea where that came from, and it's just good old family lore, and it always sounded good, but I always figured I had to have nymphs and things, painted and hanging around up there. So then, when you would walk through this doorway, and these were doors. Okay, they're probably still there on that side. This was the top of the ballroom. And this was a suspended balcony. So, and then here's the cornerstone. I think I can remember the year. 1925. October 25th, 1916. So that part was 1916. And then this must have been just, well, who knows? My guess is a couple of years later. But come take a look at the view. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep it cool. My husband hates air conditioning. And so we've been lucky to keep it cool through yesterday.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, isn't this
beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, so you can see how much landfill there is, because that was, we don't know how much was beach there and how much was lake. Here, I'll give you, open this up.
So this street didn't exist before, right?
Right.
Okay. So
No,
those are
and they did it in several parts.
Okay.
So it's funny, the irony is that my husband's grandmother owned a big house in Oconomowoc. And they did the same thing to her when she was in Europe when she came home, and they'd taken and put a road in front of it.
Okay.
So they took her land and, and put a road. But we're the only private property out that we own property on Lincoln Memorial Drive. The fenced-in area is ours, and it goes out to the sidewalk. But they added more landfill when they were doing the deep tunnel, and they had to get rid of all the stones and things. And so I was unhappy that they were going to push the lake more. But now, of course, I'm thrilled, because I never really liked using this room, because at night it was like looking at the dark hole of Calcutta. I mean, it was just black. But now we have land and trees, and when the moon's out, and enough street lights, so that now when you're sitting here and this curtain's up, it's just not a dark.
So now it's more aesthetically pleasing.
Much more, much more. So I'm glad that I was unhappy that they can't get this straight, that they were doing that. But on the other hand, I guess it's not.
So before the street was built, this room were less used before. I mean, because it's dark.
No. We used, well, my children used it as a playroom. We used it, but I didn't personally like to be here because there was no point of vision. And one of your young women that came through said that they had a cottage. She knew exactly what I was talking about. When you're right on the lake and you just look out and all you have is water, it's wonderful during the daytime, but at night, it doesn't mean anything. So we're happy with it that they increase. But I hope they don't go any further. I mean, I really think they've done enough down there. So and then we were in the process. We took down about 60 trees last year. I'm tired of all these trees that grew up. It used to be grass. My children used to play there. And then when they grew up and they didn't play there anymore, we quit mowing it. And nobody told me when you quit mowing it that you were going to get all those box elder trees. I mean, one after another. So we took a lot of them down. Now I have, and I just used a handyman, and I did one landscaping service for some of it. But now I've hired an arborist for the fall. We were going to try and do it this spring, but the weather was so bad, and the weeds grew so fast that we just, because down there is quite a mess of pieces of wood from trees and things. So we're going to take out a few more trees and clean it up. And then I have a huge bed of daylilies that Tom's grandmother had down there. And as we've taken away the trees, they're growing. And someone said it is possible that, it won't be in my lifetime, but they could take over the whole yard. It could be a whole yard of daylilies. But if we just start taking some of this stuff out, and then we'll see what we get down there. But anyway, so
yes, box elders just creep up from the roots, and they get everywhere. I have 5 or 6 in my yard.
They're just awful, aren't they?
Yes, I can't get.
And of course, the first thing we did was get a little criticism because of cutting trees down, and I love trees too, but they were all. And I'll tell you what, for the first time, not last year, the year before, we started to have box elder bugs. We also had another really serious problem, and that was that, I don't know if you know what a millipede is. It looks a little like a worm. It's about that long, yeah. And so to make a long story very short, our tenants one night called, and they were vacuuming the ceiling and the walls and the floor, and they were emptying their vacuum into plastic bags, and the bags were moving. My handyman came out, he woke me up, he said, I just have to. So we got Will Kill here, and it was a migration of these millipedes, and they were moving right through my house as if it didn't exist. And so our tenants had to move out and live someplace else for 2 or 3 days while we put all kinds of incredible poison around the base of the house and in their apartment. And we got some, and my daughter so it was 2 years ago, my daughter just moved here with her baby, so we didn't want any poison in our house because the baby was crawling. Well, anyway, it was really a nightmare, and I probably only killed myself 30 to 40, but we're talking about thousands. I mean, and so the man, when he tried to cancel his appointment to make it a day later, I said, no. I said, you promised me, I'm counting on you, you have to come see. And when he got here, he said, I want to apologize. He said, when people get bugs they don't want, they call me up, and they always exaggerate. Oh my God, he said, I didn't know what to do when I walked in and saw all those. So he actually called all over the country, and it happens a lot in Florida. And so they said it would help if we would move some of the vegetation. So once we started moving the vegetation, we just kept moving. I bet you'd like to see the tavern, because you weren't here for the tour.
Oh, that is neat.
Yeah, so this is really, no, just don't trip on this, on that rug. Well, this will be nice and cool. It'll be a little damp, but. So to get to the garage, you drive along the west side of the house, and then you turn and you go down like this. And the garage is on the other side of there. But if you want to go all the way down, we can. This room, in all the years we've lived here, we've only had 2 parties here. We have tenants who live, you go through that door and then you're in their apartment. Well, you're going to see our problem. We have a water problem that is never going to be taken care of. We had a lot from the west, but we totally tore up around the driveway. But there are just all sorts of problems. You just don't realize how low we are. There's no way to dig along the side of the house to come down to take care of it. But we did totally do the whole front yard and the landscaping. And I thought we'd gotten rid of that. We've never, so last night must have been some terrible storm. And so my kids think maybe I should get 2 dehumidifiers going. But anyway, you just walk through here. I can't show you their apartment. I don't have a key. But anyway, so you walk through here and then you walk into their apartment. And then it's this 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, and it's got 10-foot ceilings. And then below them is a full basement. And then below that's a little sub-basement. And then if you went up the stairs here, you'd go up into the garage. And so somebody who came from your group, when I showed him upstairs, right above this, and I said that leads, why is this? Oh, I see this coming in here. Okay, good, sorry. I said we were always told there were puppet shows, and he knew that it was kind of a minstrel place. I know they had massive parties here. There was lots of furniture and things that got sold when they were going to tear the house down. So, but anyway, notice little things like that. I mean, and these beams, we have no idea where they came from, but they're certain. I always thought railroad ties, but they actually could find notches in them, and they think they were actually supporting beams somewhere. It's got little things like this. That desk is built in, which is kind of crazy. So, and that used to be just pouring wet, and the water would just go right down. And we stopped that, but we just can't seem to stop this other. And then that's the driveway. So. But it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
I guess I always thought I'd do a party, but 2 is enough. And I did, you see it down there, I did paint the walls. Will you do me a favor and hit that switch? Thanks. Because I hated these ugly old stone walls. So I'm going to just pull this rug. I don't know.
It's okay.
Let you guys can see that. So it's interesting. So I think a young family would come along with a little energy. Maybe my daughter will eventually move in this house. So let's see. So now I'm totally out of breath. So
Relax.
yeah, relax. So when we were looking at this house, and I knew I was going to live here, his grandmother had huge hanging, I forgot what they're called. I'll think of it in a minute. Across there, the floor was stained black, big oriental rugs. The ceiling was much, much darker. And I just couldn't believe that this ugly room was going to be my house. So thank God for decorators. First thing they did was say lighten the ceiling, lighten the floor, because the floor is a beautiful parquet. And, you know, to have been stained so dark. And then took the tapestries down and put white rugs, which my children don't forgive me for because, you know, they have to walk around the edges. So, now, have I gone too far off? What?
So how many children do you have?
I have 2 children, and they were born in '63 and '66, and so we moved here in '64. So my son was born when we were living here. And
son and a daughter?
A son and a daughter. And my son lives in Chicago, and he's in real estate. He was here this morning, and then he's a mortgage broker. And then and my daughter and her husband both lost their jobs in New York. She was in the marketing department at Tiffany for 17 years, but she's been picking up freelance jobs for a lot of places in New York. And he just started a job with an insurance company, so we'll cross our fingers. I mean, after a year, it is really hard. So.
And how many grandchildren do you have?
Well, my daughter at 48 had her first baby. It's my first grandchild. She's now 2. And my daughter's going to be 50, and my son is going to be 46, and he's married to a 33-year-old, and their first baby's due in September. So that's really nice. So that's the, I mean, it's so sad to have a husband with Alzheimer's, but it's very happy to have a 2-year-old in the neighborhood. And I mean, it's like she was here this morning. She's coming back this afternoon. She calls me Pat, and she just runs in, and she calls my husband Papo. And he doesn't know who she is, but it doesn't matter. I mean, she brings a smile to his face, and for the longest time we would pick her up and she'd give him a kiss. But now when we pick her up, he gives her a kiss. So it's really, yeah. So that's the really happiness of this life right now. I mean, I'm just so grateful to have them here. So we'll see. But I have very good help during the day, and so things are. And she came here to help, and because my husband was in a home for a little while, which I hated. So it's been nice having her. So that way, if I want to go out in the evening, I can have a night off. But
So you took college here in Milwaukee?
My daughter went to Denison. Oh, me? No, I didn't go to college. Don't write that in there. Oh, do not write that in there. You know, I was the president of the Friends of the Golda Meir Library at UWM for, oh my gosh, 3 years. But I've been on their board over 10. And nobody's ever asked me what college I went to. And I know I'm the only person who's not a college graduate. So when I moved to Milwaukee, I was a legal secretary, and I went to school for that. And I loved it. And I was very happy, and then got married. And then I took classes at Marquette and UWM, but I never took them for credit. And so, you know, you get to that. I guess what I'm going to say, I love this neighborhood. I love the diversity of this neighborhood. I love the fact of the Water Tower Landmark Trust. All different kinds of people join. They join if they're a tenant. They join if they're a landowner. They join if they have a business in the area. And it's really diverse, and the programs are interesting. And you can just walk down the street, and even if you don't know the new neighbor, you get to know them, you smile. I mean, the Water Tower Landmark is a small community within this very big city. And what could be nicer than to be on this lake? But it is just a desirable place to live, really. As a landowner or a tenant, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just, you can walk downtown. You've got the bike path just right out here on Kenilworth or at Lafayette. You can walk to the art museum. I mean, yeah. So it's just a wonderful place to live.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Are you living here on this side?
No, I'm living near the North Auckland.
Near North Auckland. Okay. Oh, good. Well, that's all right. That's
yeah.
You still get the benefit of the lake because it'll keep you cooler.
It's not far from the
right.
lake. Yeah.
Just don't go on the other side of the river. Now, where do you live?
I live down by Lake Geneva.
Oh, by Lake Geneva. Oh, I love Lake Geneva. Oh, where down there?
I actually live in Lyons. So
in Lyons.
North.
No, I grew up in Beloit. And so I spent a lot of time in that Lake Geneva and Delavan area. Well, I love that. Oh, so you're just involved in this program?
Oh yeah.
So you come up every day, or what's going on? No.
I did last year's project.
Aha.
And
which was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes.
And graduated in December with my master's in history, and offered to come and help this week with
nice.
oral histories.
Oh, how nice.
It's my favorite
how
part
nice.
of the project. So, yeah,
great.
I'm glad I'm getting to sit
Good.
here with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm just really enjoying it. And just skip that college question. Say you forgot to ask her. On the other hand, I was always a card-carrying member of NOW, and I've been a feminist forever, and Gloria Steinem is my idol. But when I was in high school, my advisors said I really had good grades, and I was National Honor Society, but I didn't want to go to college. I had an unusual home life, and I didn't want to go to college, and there wasn't money for it. And she said, I'll never forget her, she said, well, if you don't go to college, how are you ever going to find a man to get married? And I mean, I just hate to tell you, that was 1958, and in 1958, of the friends of mine that went to college, there were a lot that got married right away and didn't, but of the ones that went to college, well, clearly half, if not more, did go there to meet a man. I mean, it's just appalling. You wouldn't do that today. I mean, it isn't even on the radar today. So, and my son went to University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then he got his master's degree there also. And then my daughter went to Denison in Ohio. Her field was art history, And as this person who was helping me tutor her, oh my God, I don't know how she ever really graduated from anything, and he said, your daughter's been bored probably since 3rd grade. So that was really her problem. I mean, she's very smart, she's very astute, and all of a sudden, she didn't even go to Denison for a walkthrough, and they accepted her. So when we went down and saw it, we couldn't believe what a beautiful, beautiful school. And its field is art history, and she won their biggest award. So it is interesting, isn't it, that she just wasn't competitive, and so she was applying at all these schools, and they weren't interested in her. I don't blame them. I mean, with those grades, I wouldn't have been too interested in her either. She was a very nice person. She still is a very nice person, a very good mother.
Yeah. So I'm going to interject here, since we're talking a little bit about education and how you're really involved politically, it seems like, in the neighborhood and that. So how do you see education with children today and how that affects the community where you
Well, I'm a reader of John Kozel, and all the young families that are moving in, their children are going to St. Robert's. My daughter's looking into Maryland Avenue because they have a Montessori program as a possibility. But here's what's changed for me and for the neighborhood. When the neighborhood association formed, we were like, I want to say 250 members. It was a pretty nice membership. Met the first Wednesday of every month, which it still does, except July and August. And if you were running as alderman or county supervisor or state rep or state senate, you booked an appointment and you came to one of our meetings and you talked to us, and we got to know who you were. And if the group decided they really liked somebody, they weren't nonprofit. I take it back. They could have given money because they weren't really nonprofit. They never did actually financially endorse anybody. But I can tell you, if they didn't support you, certainly as a alderman or a county supervisor, you would never have been elected from this area. So they have changed the boundaries, but big money has just really come in. I mean, so when somebody would run, and if the neighborhood liked them, different neighbors would give parties for them. We would give them a chance to talk at the water tower. Individuals would work on their campaigns. I mean, I can't tell you how many campaigns I worked at and how many really wonderful aldermen and supervisors we had. I mean, it was all part of the community. That does not happen anymore at all. And I don't care how much money the organization would give or the individuals would give. It never is going to amount to what they're getting from big sources, whoever's buying them up. I mean, it's really, I think it's just really hopeless. I don't know. I just don't know what the answer is. I'm thrilled. I'm one of those that are thrilled to death that they're going to cut the county supervisor board. I hope in half, and their salaries right down to nothing. Because I've believed that from the day I moved here. You know, they formed that I moved here in 58, and I can't remember, did they form it in 1960 or 60? I mean, somewhere right in there, and I remember thinking, what a mistake. Why do we need another governmental agency? But for a while the county supervisor cared about you or your neighborhood or the park across the street. I mean, the park across the street is a really good example. One of my tenants on Wall Avenue has a house on a nice lake in the summer, and was only there in the winter. She was my tenant for 47 years. She just moved out a year ago to St. John's. But she was appalled that Wall Avenue had no view left at all. So she got the county to work with her. She brought in an arborist from Racine. She brought in a person who does gardening from Oconomowoc. I mean, and she got the neighbors, myself included, and other property owners to donate money. And then she put up probably $50,000 of her own money in order to open up the view. And if you go and look, there is no erosion. They've planted the low-growing plants that do it. These trees that are hanging there, the roots that's what's washing it away. The trees are pulling away, and that's what's causing the erosion. And so anyway, so it shows what one person can do, and needed to do. And she got a lot of slack. They said this rich woman living on Wall Avenue for her view. Well, she had a view in the winter. She only lived there in the winter. She did it really. She's very strong Democrat. She really did it for the people. And they actually staged one of Dr. Seuss's plays in front of her house to mock her. But so my reason for bringing that up is that this park is the same. It is hard to believe, but when you would drive in the 60s and the 70s to come down to my house, the entire harbor of Milwaukee is laid out. You look across the park and see it. Thousands of people came here on the 3rd of July to watch the fireworks. Hundreds of them still come back because they think we're so close to the park, and their parents remember that there was a view, but there's no view. You cannot see any fireworks from that park over there. So now we have a family at the end of the street at Back Bay where all that house is being remodeled. I mean, it's going to be quite a wonderful addition they're putting in. But anyway, a lot of us went to Bad Farm for the city to get his zoning changed and things because he's awfully close to the house next door, and they're in favor. But there wasn't any real reason to deny him. I mean, the beauty of this neighborhood is the diversity of the architecture. It does not look like tract homes. And so he has promised, and he has met with the same people that she did, that when he gets the house done, he's going to give us back our view. If you walk out, you'll see there's one bench that has somewhat of a view. And that view was created by my husband 10 years ago with different homeless people that he would hire. And they would go over, it was against the law, and they were taking out junk and topping trees and everything. And all he did it was, just in front of the bench. And there's a beautiful evergreen that he was trying to save. They're a low-growing evergreen. And he got caught once, and they said that if he didn't stop, there would be a big fine, and that was it. So that was it. So, I mean, he didn't want to stop, but his family said, enough is enough. We do not want to go visit you in jail. But so for a long time, I could point out this just really incredible view. Now, if you go and sit on that bench, you have no view left anymore at all. But you can still see that it's only grown up this high instead of as high as on either side. So if we had county supervisors who cared, that could have been taken care of. And here's the biggest problem, and we didn't realize it for a long time as residents, was that the county the board had passed a law, I think in like 1984, that volunteers could not be used in the park. So for all those years when these parks were not maintained because they didn't have the budget, they didn't have the employees, for all the reasons that they've got, we were all asking, couldn't we have a day off that we could all go in, and even when we'd say we'd bring an arborist, they kept turning us down, but we did not know that they had a law in the books. That's gone. That law is gone because now, and I'm sure that Lake Park is the reason for that, because they have all those volunteers and they do all those days that are set aside for people to go in and do work. Same thing with Villa Terrace. They have days where they can come in and well, maybe that's private, but anyway, so right now, I think what's keeping this neighborhood is the fact that people are keeping up the houses. It was sad that when you couldn't sell your houses when people got stuck, but I'm happy to report there were only a couple of houses here where the people really needed to sell. And the one I know for sure did hang on, and they got a really nice price and just sold. So it took them 2.5 years. So we're lucky that there wasn't a lot of movement in the neighborhood. And what movement there was were young families that did come in. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future with schools. I mean, schools are just really a mess. Property taxes are just outrageous, really. So I'm running our business, and we have a 5-family on Prospect, a 4-family on Newberry, and then we have, 6 or 7 2-families along this area. And you cannot make a profit on a 2-family. The property taxes, the taking care of the lawns, snow removal, water and sewer, trying to think of just what my expenses are. You can't make a profit. Now all of a sudden, because there was no building for all that period, rental prices have gone very high. So now I can rent the things for higher, but it's still not a good business anymore. It was a very good business 40 years ago, but it's not anymore. So I'll be looking to get out of this business when it's a good time to sell. Mm-hmm. So
you have retired?
My husband retired, but I'm running the properties. Oh. And so I brought my daughter here hoping that she would help with it, and she has helped some, but it's a lot of work. I have 2 apartment buildings on Summit and Woodstock, but I have a live-in caretaker for there, and that's profitable. So that's kind of really what carries the rest of them. But I don't want to, I'm not complaining. I mean, I'm just stating a fact that, so I'm hoping that there'll be an interest in selling a duplex to owner-occupied, because it's a very good deal as owner-occupied. Because then you can rent it for enough, certainly, to pay off your property tax. But you really pay your property tax and a lot of your expenses. And almost all of them have their own boilers and hot water heaters, so the tenant picks that up anyway. So what else? Now, I'll quit talking and you you can ask.
We
Yeah.
love it that you're talking and telling us.
Well, I love this area. I do. I just love it.
So do you use the park ever?
Yes. Well, now with the baby, I use it every day. And on weekends, it has a huge African American population, which I really love. And I mean, like yesterday, you could just hear the laughter in this house of the kids over there. There were so many children. It was just filled, and it was really wonderful. So I'm glad that the whole city knows that this park is for everybody. Also, during the week, lots of days you see schools come in with buses, mostly daycare, some of the summer schools, and they bring children in and they spend the morning and the afternoon. But it is really a baby park, and the equipment is all for, well, I don't know what age. I think they said 6 and under or something, or 8 and under. It's not. It doesn't have any of the swings and things for older children. But yes, and I have that dog, which she must have gone with Tom. So I walk the dog every day, as does everybody else that has a dog, and you just get to know everybody. I mean, that's what I love. I just love the mixture of people. I mean, it's hard to believe that in a city like this, Milwaukee has this. I used to sell real estate, and one of the things I remember being taught to tell people when they were coming to look at Milwaukee, Milwaukee's the only city on a Great Lake that you can start at south end of Terrace Avenue, and you can drive for 10 miles of uninterrupted, no commercial. The only well, there is none. I was going to say at Silver Spring and Lake Drive, but not really, because you can skirt that. You don't have to follow Lake Drive to onto Silver Spring and go north. You can cut in along. So it is residential for 10 miles along a Great Lake, and that is really beautiful. So I think if you were mapping the city of Milwaukee, you'd get Shorewood, and you'd get Whitefish Bay, and you'd get Fox Point. I mean, it's just very unusual. But I think this is the best part, because it's got sidewalks. The houses are closer together. You really know your neighbors. Whatever. So, what else can I tell you? I'm trying to think what history. I think I've pretty much. Yeah, I just know that Tom's father did 10 houses that he made into duplexes, and we sold 5 of them. So those are owner occupied. One of them is a condo. The rest are all still. Somebody lives in one part and rents the other.
So how do you see, I guess the politics of this neighborhood as it's changed over time? Because what you had said before was kind of the Great Depression era, and that when there were lots of renters, and you said that your husband, was that when he would get the homeless people to do work?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he would go down to the rescue mission. In fact, we didn't use lawn services for a long time, because he would just, when you have a snowstorm, he would just drive down, and he would hire some of the men, and they'd come up and they would shovel. So that's changed. We don't see very many homeless here. We get a few that come and live in the park occasionally. And I can tell you this part, we went through some real bad transitions in the 60s and 70s. We had a lot of drugs. We had a lot of prostitution, a lot of drug dealing. We had some murders. Lincoln Memorial Drive was a mess. It was African Americans in one parking lot and Hispanics in the other, and they often had very big fights. And then, I think, I don't remember, I want to say like 1969, something around that time, a whole group of what I'm just going to refer to as hippies. I mean, just out of control kids on drugs, and they tore through North Avenue and Farwell, and they broke up the buildings and everything. So the county, in its wisdom, decided that what they needed was a place to congregate. So they set up an area below our house. So you saw when you looked out our window where that were a rectangle down there with a fence. So on the south side of that fence is a natural little curved area. They actually have a place in there where they can plug in live music. They had live stage music. They tried to get, because these kids started to congregate then around the water tower, the water fountain. So now they brought them down to the lakefront. And the only person bothered, really, of course, was a few of us, but mostly me. I mean, we were really bothered. Nobody has any idea what we put up with. And if you talk to the police, they absolutely hated it, because as they would come in to try to break it up when it was time for them to end, they would part and come behind them, and they were stuck at the bluff. They never wanted to get out of their cars. So we would hear these bullhorns. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for you to leave. Go get in your car. Go home. And then they would come run up the bluff too. I mean, you talk about erosion. I'm lucky there. I don't know how we have all those trees really, because they would come up, and then of course we'd have this whole problem here in the park, and then they'd have to come up and dispense them. And it was really, for quite a while, it seemed forever, but probably 6-7 years, and until the sheriff's department. And I have to say this, that I don't love the sheriff, but I love the job he's done at the lakefront, and I will happily give him money for that. He just made himself a presence 2 or 3 years ago, and he is down there. And there are no fights. There's no. They're not driving up and down with their boom boxes going. They're not congregating after 10 o'clock. And I guess if I could have a hope, it would be that because they've now taken care of the real serious problem, that people can now then actually come back and walk at night. I mean, on a 90-degree night, and it's 11 o'clock, you should be able to come and park on Lincoln Memorial Drive with your children or your date and walk and enjoy the lake. But those people really, all of them, I mean, not just one particular group, they all really ruined it for the whole population. And now there's this big movement by Chris Abley to get rid of the sheriff doing and he wants it to go back to the police. And I did write a letter to the editor they published. The problem with that really is that the police, they hired the extra police for overtime for Summerfest. Summerfest, the fireworks start at 10 o'clock. The park here is supposed to be closed at 10 o'clock. So the police are all down at Summerfest. They're not up here governing the parks. And then when Summerfest would end, you can guess there's a natural group of them that would just keep coming down here. So it's 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, if not longer, before the police have ever really cleared out Lincoln Memorial Drive. So the sheriff doesn't have that problem. They don't work Summerfest. They only work this area. And so, I mean, I don't know how they're going to resolve it, but I've just got to hope that the sheriff is allowed to have this, because it's really working. And if we could start to let the population come back in the evening, that would be really nice. So I don't know. And I'm the only spokesperson. There's nobody else left around here who remembers those days of what it was really like. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they've all gone to St. John's, believe it or not. I mean, all the people that I knew, in these blocks that really cared about that are gone. So, but lots of young people are in. So.
Yeah. And so you were talking a little bit about the 60s and,
right.
and that time period.
Mm-hmm.
We went and infiltrated them. I had a party one night, and we all changed our clothes and put things on our headband. I've got a photograph of it somewhere, and we all went down, and we joined them. These were all my friends who lived out in River Hills and Fox Point and Bayside. They couldn't believe that they were, first of all, they never walked, at night anywhere. They couldn't believe they were walking from my house up to the water tower to join a group of kids to listen to music and things. And we had a really good time. I mean, it was really fun. This was after they had destroyed, the group had moved on and destroyed, but this is when they were beginning to look for a place for them to congregate. But then, of course, when they created the place, that brought the rest back. So, I mean, I thought it was beginning to die out. It was really beginning to die out. But by giving them a spot on the lakefront to come with their heavy music and they could come. They could turn that music on starting at 2:00 on Sundays and Saturdays. So it went. Yeah, you couldn't read a book in this house. Yeah, even with all the windows closed. When I didn't have air conditioning, it was. Yeah, it was that was awful. But what other transitions have I really seen here?
I was going to ask if,
Yeah.
if the was it the open housing, was that what it was when, I think that's what it's called, but I can't.
Well,
The March on Milwaukee.
yes, that was in
and
'69, and that was on 3rd Street, and they really burned it down. And my cleaning woman lived on 4th Street. She lived in her basement for 3 nights. She was terrified to leave, and it was good that she was terrified to leave. She shouldn't have left. And I mean, they were just and it was good. It was right. I mean, not that they burned these things down, but nobody was paying any attention. It's still the most segregated city practically in the United States. It is appalling to me. And now they've taken over 2nd Street, 1st Street, all the first streets after you cross the river. They've taken that all over now and beautified it and brought back all the houses and everything. But in the meantime, that's been pushing the African American population further and further away. And so now they're more and more segregated, and they're now starting more like, instead of 3rd Street, they're more probably around 14th Street. And then they're going northwest up to Brown Deer. I mean, that's just become a corridor, Capitol Drive. But when I sold real estate, I worked for Ogden Company. Their office was out in Bayside. They couldn't believe that anybody even wanted to specialize in real estate down here. I mean, we're talking about in the late 70s. They couldn't believe it. They were selling real estate out in Mequon to people who were afraid to live down here. But so all of that created all these problems. So when you had the uprising here, and you had all the hippies, and you had the burning of 3rd Street, people gave it a bad name. In fact, I can tell you what's really interesting. The University Club Tower, $1 million, $500,000, probably the cheapest you could buy anything in there. So it's $1 million and up. These are mostly people who have moved either from the west side, Brookfield, Elm Grove, some Wauwatosa, or from Mequon and River Hills down. And St. John's built their huge retirement tower, and I was told the other day that they are all sold. I mean, that is massive. I can't even remember how many. Oh, I should know how many stories, 34 stories or something, but whatever it is. And I know a lot of people in there, but because a lot of neighbors have moved in there, but lots of people have come down from River Hills, especially there. And you should hear them talk. They are just shocked at how nice it is here. Well, it's been nice here a long, long time. I had one woman who was a big walker, and she said to me, you know, Pat, sometime I should call you and I should show you all the places you could walk. You know, I just had to really control my temper. I mean, really. I've been a big walker since 1960, and 2, 3, or 4 miles a day. So, I mean, there's not a better place in the whole world to live than here for walking, for enjoying that, for biking. We used to do cross-country skiing up Wall Avenue. Yeah, that you don't see too much of that anymore. But but now the harbor's bigger and better. The yacht club is good. You see more and more boats down there because of all the landfill. So I was disappointed when they were going to put that awful expressway across where the lagoon is. There was going to be, I-94 was going to come all the way out around, and they opened up that whole corridor. That would have really hurt this neighborhood. It would have really hurt downtown, because you would not have gotten off a freeway and ended up downtown or here. So that was lucky that was defeated. But in getting ready for it, when they were doing the deep tunnel and they had all of the stuff from under there what to do with, that's when they did all the landfill east of the lagoon. You used to drive down Lincoln Memorial Drive and you'd see the lagoon and you'd see the lake. So now it's, you can't see the lake. It's too far. The lagoon's still pretty, but it's, yep. That was a view I'm sorry we lost. But on the other hand, we stopped a freeway. Yeah, and they stopped that by neighbors and people in the suburbs going to, it wasn't Jim Moody, and he dried up the federal funds for highway development in Milwaukee. They had no money. They couldn't build it. And so here they'd torn all these houses down, emptied up this whole space, did that whole landfill, and they had no money to build the highway. It was really lucky. So let's see, what else can I tell you? I remember going to interesting parties. I remember my father-in-law died in 1971, and Mrs. Smith and then Curtis, who owned Villa Terrace, she had her last party there, and we got to go because my father-in-law was a friend of hers. It was about the same generation, and that was really something. I mean, you know, from Beloit, I had to really pinch myself on that one because it was her very best friends and their daughters and son-in-laws. And so there must have been about 24 of us. It was a sit-down dinner with a waiter probably for every person. It was just, and I remember then getting a tour of Villa Terrace as she was going to move out the next day. And I never got over the basement. You could have eaten on the floor of the basement. I've never seen a house maintained like that. And then directly across the street from it, Andy Nunemacher owns this beautiful house that I call the Vogel House. It's got this beautiful fence around it. And we were privileged to go to the last party there, the Vogels gave. And she was a booth from Detroit, and she had one of the finest art collections in the world, really. And a lot of it went to the Detroit Art Museum. Some went to our museum. But, I mean, you were sitting at the dining room table looking at Bonnards. I mean, it was... She didn't have a huge collection. What she had was the best of what there was. So it's been a really interesting neighborhood. And then I went to talk to a woman that was my tenant, Mrs. Weigel, and I said, I was very active in Planned Parenthood. My husband was the first president or the director of the first campaign they ever had. And we went to Mrs. Weigel because we knew she had some money and wanted to ask her to help work for Planned Parenthood. And she looked at me, and I remember her saying, "Dearie, I'm in my 70s. She said, I've done all that. She said, you need to find the young people now. But that's another thing about this neighborhood. This neighborhood is really a very active neighborhood. I mean, I don't know if you could find anybody in this neighborhood that isn't involved in a charity someplace. I mean, I know you can't. The woman next door on the second floor is a poet, and she goes to the Allied Abortion Center, and she helps women cross that awful picket line once a week. I mean, it's just... So it's just amazing what different neighbors are doing here.
So is this neighborhood segregated? You find?
No, it's not. It's integrated. We have African Americans. I have African American tenants. Yeah, it's not as much as it should be. Mm-hmm. It could be more, but I think what's keeping what is keeping them out? Well, schools and schools and money. It's expensive to live here because of the property taxes, and the school system is so bad. But now that you do, I don't even know how you do it, you know, I mean, you apply and you do the charter schools and things. I don't know, I would think that would start now. Houses are more affordable now. The houses are certainly not what they were 5 years ago. I'm hoping that would bring back, in fact, I did just meet the owner of a new house in the 300 block of North Terrace Avenue. He's African American. I said, did you buy this house? He said, yes. I said, yay, good for you. So, but I was walking my dog and I didn't really want to stop him. He was bringing his trash out. I don't know if he's single, married, got kids, I don't know. But it has always been a comfortable neighborhood for diversity. We have a lot of gay people living in this neighborhood. I just don't think that you'd have a problem. And my caregivers for my husband are Hmong and Filipinos, and there's just no problem at all. I mean, you know, with coming here to work or walking in the neighborhood or bringing their families down here. So it's a very safe place. But I would like to see it more diversified.
Before I moved here, I was told that Milwaukee is in general, it's a very segregated city.
Well, it is, because it is, but
what makes this neighborhood
different?
Yeah.
Well, I think what I learned, there was a man that was at UWM, Reuben Harpole and Belden Paulson, and they had a wonderful program where you could sign up and you could learn about the African American community. And I did sign up and do that, and I did it with Mrs. Lloyd Pettit, actually. And so we went, but one of the things they taught us was, you're always going to have segregation unless you have in your house, as your guests, diversity. And so we had quite a number of African American friends, and I was one of the founding board members of Kothi. And so it's just, I think because there are professors, because the diversity is of the people living here in their occupations, there's lots of professors, there are doctors, there's students, there are graduate students. I just think that it just makes it more comfortable. I don't know. I don't know how else I can answer that question. I am appalled at how segregated the city is. I mean, I'd be curious to know in Bayview. I know Bayview is really hard to buy anything in because the minute they put a sign out, it's sold. But that seems to me pretty segregated. It's very liberal, but it seems it just seems to me it's segregated though, that it's white. That's what I should say when I'm saying segregated. I don't know.
So the neighborhood.
I think it's because they're educated.
Okay.
And because like my children went to the private school, the university school, but in their class in those days, because we had public transportation all that way out there, but my children had African Americans in their classroom. And then we went and actually lived in London for a year. And my son was in an American school, and his whole class were all American children, but there wasn't one child in his class that had ever lived in America. So one member of the family was American and one was Pakistani or Indian or whatever, and because they were American, because they were married to an American, that school, it was just very interesting. So I think the schools were breaking down the stereotype, and then when the university school sold off its South Campus and the Milwaukee public transportation quit going all the way out there, that school is very, very segregated. I think probably the only African Americans there would be very rich, where when my children were there, it was some rich African American doctors, and scholarship. I don't know if they do scholarship anymore.
So some residents in this neighborhood is, African Americans.
Yes, yes. In fact,
how many percent?
Right next door. Oh, it's small.
Small.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. It's probably 3 or 4%. It's small. But next door to Villa Terrace South is Virginia Little, who owns that house. She's African American. She owns a business that provides workers for people who need home health care. She has an agency, and she has an office in downtown Milwaukee and then one in Shorewood, I think. And she's extremely liberal. She gave a big party for Al Gore when he was running for president. That was really big and exciting. And then I know an African American dentist. Well, let's make it 5% less, because as I'm ticking it off, I'm thinking of others. And I know people whose children are married to African Americans, so that almost works. I know, it is awful, isn't it? It's hard to be a liberal, live in this beautiful area, and have to admit that. I think it's very sad, really. So, and I think you just have to make an effort at it. And I don't know, I don't know. I have to ask my daughter. I hope her generation, I hope the 40s and 50s are. I don't know. So
the park you mentioned is down there? The park?
Yeah, it's right across the street.
Right across, okay.
Yeah, there's a little Back Bay. It's called Back Bay Park. It's a little children's park.
Here, so.
Oh yeah, okay. And then when you walk, if you walk toward the swing sets and things, if you just continue along the side, you will come to these large steps that go down to Lincoln Memorial Drive.
So when you take your walks,
I usually go north. I go along Terrace Avenue, and then along Wall Avenue, and then along Lake Drive up to Edgewood. If I'm really adventuresome, I go down. This is when I have the dog. But my dog now is 12. And so I guess I have to be honest, a lot of my walks now with her are 2 miles. So, but when I'm feeling adventuresome, we go down to the lakefront, because then you go down a big hill and you have to come up a really big hill. And but that's interesting. And I don't do as many walks as I should that way. And I don't, because there's so many people. There's nobody hardly ever walking this way. I mean, there's a few dog walkers, and you get on a first name basis with them. But when you go south, you start to encounter a lot of people that are walking to work, that Yeah, that are at Altera. I don't know. It's just more congregated, and I think that when I take my walk in the morning, that's when I love to solve all the problems that I've got. So I don't really want to, you know, I really want to hear the lake and see the trees, and so that's really nice.
So when the lake is closer to this house, did you use the lake more often before?
No, we don't. Well, we use the apartment downstairs. I used to rent it. I was lucky. My first 2 tenants were families with children. And so that was another reason we kept the lawn mowed, and it was a grassy area, and we had sandboxes and a tree house. The trees. In fact, I was shocked when we were taking the trees down. I told them, be sure when you get to the big tree where the tree house is, do not touch it. It was down. We never knew it had even fallen down. But so there isn't 2 openings to the gate. And so those people would actually go out and use the lake a lot that way. If we were going to use this lake, we would walk over into the park and go down the steps. Yeah. Or we'd walk up to North Avenue, and then and then there's that bridge that goes over to the beach. That's the way we would go. But when the kids were really little, until they were about 12, we had a house in Oconomowoc, just a very small summer cottage. So we didn't use the lake much. I mean, we walked some on the beach, but we didn't really. Tom, though, used to go down there and swim in McKinley Beach, where there were no lifeguards, and he would swim as early as he could in the spring and as late as he could in the fall, and he did it every day. And so did other people around here did that too. Yeah.
Is that crowded? I mean, by night, because there are highway, street here.
Yes.
Is that crowded?
Is that crowded? Yes. Just on Saturdays and Sundays and at night, but the sheriff really gets them out by 10 o'clock at night. But it's very, very crowded. Oh yes, I mean, this park was jammed. I mean, you hundreds, and then down out my bedroom window, I'm at that corner of the house. There's a park between me and Villa Terrace, or I mean, not a park, but a big grassy area. There's always people down there playing badminton or soccer or something. And then there's soccer layout to the south of my property, all along that. Yes, so the lakefront is used. But I think Sheldon Lubar, a businessman, and his name is on the School of Business at UWM. I wish here you can answer this. I can't remember how many years, but I'm going to say 5. 5 years ago, if you drove down Lincoln Memorial Drive by the beach, by Bradford Beach, on an August day, 90 degrees, you'd be lucky if you saw 10 people. The water started to get contaminated because the birds were all along there in their feces, and then the county decided they didn't have enough money for lifeguards, so there were no lifeguards, so people wouldn't take their kids down, so the beach wasn't being cleaned, the water was contaminated, and there were no lifeguards, so nobody was using the beach. So he came along and he was appalled when he saw it, and he donated the money to pay for the lifeguards for 2 years. They bring in dogs. They still do it. They bring in these dogs early in the morning that chase the seagulls away, and then they have this equipment. They clean up the stuff, but the seagulls are not there all day. I mean, the beach wasn't being used, and so they were there 24 hours. I mean, it was really a mess. But anyway, so now we have lifeguard. Now we have volleyball's taken on. They had a volleyball match once a summer. Now they have volleyball. Oh my gosh. All weekend, every weekend, and then they have 2 weeks or something when they have these big tournaments, and they've got all these nets that are up there. And so yesterday, I don't know, you couldn't have parked on Wall Avenue, Lake Drive, or down there. I don't know how far away you had to park to go down to use the lakefront. So the lakefront is absolutely thriving, and that is a big plus. And that's a comeback. And so again, it just shows that one person being outraged. I know one person years ago who was driving by UWM and heard that all the Downer buildings were going to be torn down. When she asked which were the Downer buildings, she was appalled. She formed an organization and they saved them. So, I mean, people have to realize how one person can get their neighbors together and do something. Take it back. So.
I know there have been some problems with the Milwaukee Public Works dumping, extra.
Right.
Because the sewer system
right.
gets overrun and that sort of thing. So Do you see those kinds of issues?
Sure.
Taking it?
Sure, and I think, they post where you can swim in the newspaper, and the south side really has got a bigger problem. In the north side, they took that sewer pipe and they took it another 5 miles out into the lake. So it's not as bad. But on those days when they're dumping, you can see the brown out. You can see it out there. You have to be as high as our house to see it. If you're down low, it's pretty hard. But anyway, so they have the deep tunnel. It does hold all that sewage. It can't hold all of it when they're having these big storms. But what people don't understand is that on the east side and the downtown, they have not done a deep tunnel. So we have these sewer systems, and they just upgraded this one to do the street. They didn't change it. They just upgraded it. So your raw sewage goes down this pipe, and then around it is the pipe with all the runoff of water. And then when that water gets too high, it encounters the sewage, and it all rushes out into the lake. So more and more, though, we're seeing more and more of that sewage is semi-treated. But by not doing the east side, it seems to me hopeless. I can't imagine that it'll ever be any better than it is right now. When they allow them to build the University Club Tower, the St. John's Tower, now they're going to build that big place where the transportation center is. I've forgotten what the name is they're called. I mean, that's huge. Northwestern Mutual is going to tear down, a 14-story building and build a 60-story or something. So when you're doing that, that's all this old sewage system. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, it's never going to get better, I don't think, unless, I love the Great Lakes, this whole Water Institute, and I mean, I love that everything is happening in Milwaukee. It is really exciting. I've been down there on a tour of that place. Perhaps they're going to find a way of treating that water as it comes out the pipe. And I don't know. I mean, yeah. And this is a fifth of the drinking water, something like that, right, in the world. I've forgotten all the statistics, but you lose the Great Lakes water for drinking. Mankind is done. I mean, we're really done. So, and I think we're all very aware of that here. And I think I would say that most of my neighbors here are very environmentally conscious. I do not put any pesticide on any of the properties we own, and I haven't for 15 years, and I never will. You get your little brown sprouts, you put a little grass seed, water it, you've got grass. I mean, you don't need chemicals. So if you got some weeds. Right now, I wish I knew somebody who really knew mushrooms, because in my front yard, I have so many mushrooms growing. Because of all this water we've had this spring, I have never seen anything like it, and they are not all the same variety. So and I suspect they're all edible. But I'm nervous about, they say you should not pick and eat a mushroom you don't know. So what else can I tell you, other than I love living here?
Before you moved here, you stay where?
I lived in an apartment on Prospect Avenue, and then when Tom and I got married, we lived in a small apartment on Maryland and Newberry, and then here. So I've never lived, I lived in Beloit, Wisconsin all my life, till I was 18, and then I moved here. And I have only lived on the east side. So, and I could have, if Tom wanted to, I mean, I could have, if we were following schools or something, I could have moved up to Shorewood or Whitefish Bay, because it's got sidewalks and it's a city. But I could never have lived anywhere else. So it's really hard for me to empathize with people who live in Brookfield and Elm Grove and River Hills. I mean, I just don't see how you could have a better quality of life than I have right here. I think that's the main thing you could put down, is that the quality of living here. I mean, we needed suntan lotion for my husband yesterday. You're 2 minutes from a CVS. I'm not even a minute from Whole Foods. If you drive, you can walk. So everything is walking distance. Movie theaters. Most of my movies I go to are the Down or the Oriental. I walk. Oh, it's just, yeah. I mean, where can you have anything like this? Yeah, it's just really. I go to the College Conservatory a lot to hear Frank Allman and the Prometheus trio. So and you can walk to that. I can walk to my office. My office is in a coach house on the corner of Prospect and Albion. In fact, that's my favorite walk, because then I walk out to Lafayette and go down on the bike trail. I take the bike trail to Brady, come up Brady, and I walk 1 block to my office. So that's really nice. Yeah. So what is not to love about this life?
So do you see yourself as a steward of the neighborhood?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's why I go out and walk, and I go and meet the new neighbors, and I like to know everybody around here, because then if you have a problem, like I had a really serious problem with this putting this road in from the 16th of May until whatever the date was. It was 3.5 weeks. We could not leave this property. We could not bring our car in. My husband could not take a wheelchair off. We had some, and it was, well, to say I was upset is putting it mildly, so I went to the water tower meeting, and it got on their agenda, and then I just told everybody what was happening. I said, there's a handicap access. They've denied us that for 3 weeks. Anyway, I just ranted and raved and told them I had all the facts and what had happened and all the big trenches they had and why you couldn't even walk from the street onto our property. I was walking down behind the houses on a lot. I'm dragging our dumpsters down to Terrace Avenue. And I don't know which person in that water tower did it, but this was on a Wednesday. A week from that Thursday, they were going to do the asphalt. The next morning, they were here at 7 a.m., scratching it up and cleaning it up, and they poured the asphalt on Monday. So it's really important to stay connected, and I waited too long to contact neighbors. I should have done it. I kind of felt I could do it alone, but there was no way a fire truck could have gotten here. There's no way an emergency vehicle could have ever gotten down here. So, I mean, if this house had caught on fire, there was no way. You could have maybe gotten an emergency vehicle through the lot, but you could never get a fire truck here. So anyway, yeah. So I think, yeah, I think they said they have over 300 members or 350 members of the water tower now. So that's a sizable membership, and that is definitely just to be stewards. There are those people on there that are nuts, that are, if you want to do anything to your house, they're against it. You're always going to have that problem, but most people are reasonable, and it works out. Like this woman, this house at the corner, the water tower was against it. They didn't want the code to be broken because of the lot line. But all of us that live right here that are impacted by it, all went down to City Hall and voted for it. And it's going to be really wonderful. Plus, a little addition had been added already that was so ugly, and they took that part off. So, I mean, and it's a young family moving in with 2 children. They've just adopted. So, good.
Have you run into any of those issues with anything you've done here on your property?
Just, no, we really haven't. I think the biggest problem was that there were 3 lots that got sold on Terrace, and someone bought 2 of the lots, and they built the side-by-side condos, and then Carl Kopp owns the other lot. That's the one I was walking, this behind the houses. It goes on to Terrace Avenue. And I did approach the county. I wanted to, because it comes right to this house, to the bluff. I wanted to trade those lots for Lincoln Memorial Drive, and I would give them Lincoln Memorial Drive. I would just keep enough to bring a fence in that would have actually protected the house. There's no reason we have to have that land down there. And they were so angry at me that I wouldn't just donate it, that when they did Lincoln Memorial Drive and put the boulevard in, if you'll notice, they did a bump out at our property. And it's really stupid. I mean, it's just so people can't park there. I mean, it was, and they took away our access onto the property. But they can't really deny us that, so we just drive over. When we have to go in with a truck, we drive over their curb and go in. But it was petty. But it was like the man who cut down the trees. Did you read about that, for his view on Wall Avenue? Mr. Wall gave a lot of money to the city on the condition there'd always be a view. And so it had all grown up, and so they got mad. Nobody would take care of it. So these 2 men, they went over and they took it down, and they were accused of cutting down a live tree, which they did not. But anyway, it was tied up in court for quite a while. They did get fined. They did get fined $10,000. They actually moved then, but the county planted 3 trees in their line of vision. And you know, I have to tell you the truth. Every time I go by them, I want to take a little saw and cut it down, because I could still cut them down. I mean, they're just going to be bushy little trees, and they are right in the line of vision. In the meantime, because nobody's taking any care of that park anyway, the view is almost gone. So you need neighbors when you're fighting county government or city government. I actually gave him some money toward his lawyer. I mean, I just thought it was really awful. Well, especially since I'd already broken the law. My husband had cutting that view. But I did have a couple of problems. I wanted to put on Lafayette, the house I own on the corner, needed new concrete steps. And so we were in the process of tearing them out and putting the new ones in, and all of a sudden the police came and stopped us. We had to have a permit to do that. So we had to stop construction. We had to go down to City Hall. We had to pay $100 for a permit, which allowed it because we were making no changes. We were just tearing out crumbly steps and putting them back exactly the way they were. So that's kind of that's kind of petty. I mean, they want their $100. I mean, they could have said, you know, for $100 you can do it. Well, I'd have given them a check for $100, but instead they stopped the work. So, and I'm trying to think if we had any. I don't think we've had any other problems. Personally, I'm trying to think who else has had problems here. Nobody really that I can think of. But I think the neighborhood stands behind each other. I think if you, in lots of, I can remember many times going up and down the neighborhood putting things in people's doorway for, used to be for politicians, now it's for something that needs help in the neighborhood to be done. So I bet you've had enough. If you, I mean, I'm happy to go on, but if you have other questions, I mean, you can always call me. I'm happy to. You've got my house phone, right? And I can give you the cell phone.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and we're definitely going to need to come back and get some pictures.
Okay, good. Okay, 414-559-3444. That's my cell. And do you have the house? I think you have the house.
34?
Yeah,
Okay.
559-3444.
Okay. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So are you mostly going to emphasize this house rather than some of the others in the neighborhood?
I don't know.
Like Villa Terrace or, yeah.
I'm really
It doesn't matter. Well, I don't care either. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm thrilled to have this part of it. I mean, it is certainly really historic. And isn't it too bad the darn county just didn't let us make a 4-family out of it?
I think you have a
We'd
very
have it.
beautiful house.
Thank you. Well, I do too. I love this house. Oh, and yeah, well, yeah. How could I not love this house?
I'm gonna just interject here and say it's absolutely hilarious. I have 2 daughters, 14 and 11.
Oh boy, you don't look old enough.
And I
Oh,
got
wow.
married and had my first when I was 19. So
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't really happen too often.
No,
these days,
not
but-
it. My daughter. Yeah, 38.
Yeah.
48. No, you're 48. She's 48.
So
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
So my youngest one, she's at that age now where she's asserting herself. She likes to argue.
yeah.
She likes to get
Yeah.
get in your face, sort of. And I've been telling her, you would make a really great attorney.
Oh yes.
And so now we'll drive by these big houses, and sometimes we'll drive along
Yeah.
the road here when I would bring them up to the university, and they always, the kids think that it's beautiful, all these houses, but I'm gonna have that big house. She'll point to whatever.
Yeah.
That's the house I want, and I've told her to get a really nice big house.
Yes.
They're expensive. I was like, you might be spending quite a few.
You have to be
$1
a lawyer.
and so she's like, so finally, she's decided that I'm right. She should be an attorney.
Oh,
I'm
good.
going to be a lawyer now because I want to make money so I can have a nice big house someday. And all I could think of the whole time I've been sitting here is, what would my daughter say
Yeah.
if she walked in here and saw this? She would. She
Well,
would
don't
say,
tell her I'm not a lawyer. Okay.
She says that she needs to go to Harvard University.
Oh, wow.
And Harvard.
Oh, yeah,
Law.
good.
And I
Oh,
said,
wow.
We've got Marquette right
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Great law
Even
school.
Madison.
Yes.
I mean, that'd even be cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know that when I moved to Milwaukee, I did date a young man who had a boat. I don't even remember his name. I mean, it's so long ago. And we were out on Lake Michigan, and I saw this house. And I remember thinking, my gosh, can you imagine? I mean, I had never been to Europe yet. I mean, I just couldn't imagine. And so when I started dating my husband, and he said, I want you to meet my grandmother. And when we drove up, it was this house. And when we were sitting in that room that's now in Villa Terrace, it was the other living room. I never saw this. I remember looking out those windows out of the lake thinking, I cannot believe that I am here in this house. So you could tell her she could just marry money. I mean, I didn't marry him for his money. I really loved my husband. And if I'd known how hard I was going to have to work in the real estate business with him, who knows? I might have decided to take somebody with less money. But I've been very lucky. But I also have had some stores too. I owned Paperwork, which is on Downer Avenue. I started it 25 years ago or 30 with my partner, and she still has it. And I only owned it for 4 years. And then I had a children's bookstore for 16 years. I was 8 years on Downer and then 8 years in Whitefish Bay. I did everything I could to not be doing the business. But in the meantime,